Alabama is in the college football playoff, or is it?
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, thank you for making this your very first listen every single day. My name is Barrett Sallee. You can follow me on all the social accounts at Barrett Sallee, 2 R's, 2 T's, 2 L's, 2 E's, whether it be X, Instagram, Facebook, any of those other ones that you guys have moved to. I am right there. We have a big show today. It is Fan Q&A Day, so we will talk about that. But of course, everybody is buzzing about last night's college football playoff rankings because it did solidify, at least in theory, some of the teams that will be playing in the inaugural 12-team event. This show brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, place a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if you win your initial bet. That's right, a $5 bet. If you win it, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So let's get mad, shall we? Let's get mad. Playoff rankings. There we are, playoff rankings. If you see it on YouTube, there's a fancy graphic. If you're listening, I'm not going to go through all, but Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, rounding out the top 5, Ohio State, Tennessee, SMU, Indiana, Boise State, and then the big one at 11. We all thought about South Carolina, Ole Miss, Miami, Alabama discussion all week. It is Alabama in that 11 spot, followed by Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina, then, of course, Arizona State, the Big 12 champion, is going to get that last spot. So going to the projected bracket. That's right. Alabama would get the number 11 seed over South Carolina, Ole Miss, Miami, and the like. That was the point of intrigue. And there we have it. It's set in stone. No, really, it's set in stone. That's what Warde Manuel said, not just on the broadcast, but also with us here on the teleconference. They can't change the way they evaluate teams that are not playing. Yeah, you'd think, you know what, strength of schedule might change a little bit based on what happens out there in the college football world. No. That would make too much sense, right? But there it is. Alabama's in. And look, I think when you're evaluating these teams, they're all flawed. All of them are flawed. I would say all of them are even undeserving of being called national champions, because I like my national champions to be perfect or close to it, depending on the landscape of the season. I don't think any of these teams, whether it be Alabama, Miami, South Carolina, Ole Miss, none of them have the right to be called national champion over a team like Oregon that has done what it has done throughout the course of the season. Yeah, I know they have to do more work to win than Oregon does, but still, they shouldn't even have to do that work. Oregon shouldn't have to worry about that. But that's a different story for a different day. That's me getting back on my BCS above all pedestal. I don't think they did South Carolina right here. I don't think they did Ole Miss right here. I don't think they did Miami right here. That's not to say I'm mad about Alabama being there. I said this on the show yesterday. All of those teams have valid cases, but they just don't explain it well. And the idea that it can't change is beyond me. I don't understand that. We'll get into that stuff a little bit later. You'll hear from Warde Manuel. You'll hear several questions that were posed to Warde Manuel, and you will hear a word salad. But I think the biggest thing to take away from, well, there are two things. One, Alabama's in at that last spot. What happens now? Is Alabama actually locked in? The answer is no. If you're an ACC team, if you're an ACC fan and you have tickets to the ACC championship game, I guarantee you there will be Alabama fans that will buy it because they are rooting hard for SMU. Why SMU? Because Clemson's the one team that can shake this whole thing up. If Clemson beats SMU, Clemson gets in as an automatic bid. That would knock SMU into the pool of the at-large teams. Therefore, SMU and Alabama would be arguing for that final spot. So who wins that? Warde Manuel was asked about that, and he said potentially yes. SMU could drop below Alabama if it loses the ACC championship game. Thus, SMU would have played itself into a position to play itself out of the college football playoff. It would have run the table in the ACC, not lost a single ACC game all year, and then play itself out of that position. That ain't going to happen. I know there's this idea out here that, oh, it's the Alabama brand. And I've said on this show for a very long time, brand matters in almost every context. But what's the one thing that the committee cherishes above all else? Conference champions in this particular setup. Now, we can argue about Florida State last year. Last year. This year, moving forward, they have 5 automatic bids for conference champions. Thus, they value conference champions. SMU in this situation wouldn't be one, but playing for it should matter because clearly they value the idea of being the best in a conference. So I don't think they will drop SMU below Alabama. I know the brand is the brand. I get it. I think SMU, by virtue of going undefeated in conference play, getting to Charlotte, having a pretty quality loss in BYU, even if it loses to Clemson and Charlotte, it will not drop below Alabama. The data points are still in SMU's favor. Why? Because their 2 losses would be very good losses. Alabama would have 3 losses. 2 of them would be pretty bad. To Vandy and that god-awful performance in Norman against Oklahoma. That's my opinion. It's not set in stone. Warde Manuel was asked about that. He said, yes, potentially Alabama could jump SMU if SMU loses. I doubt it happens. Now, the other thing that jumped out to me, and I don't know if I was the only person that was super intrigued by this, but you see Ohio State at 6 and Tennessee at 7. Ultimately, that was going to be the battle between the 8-9 spot based on the automatic bids. And sure enough, it is the 8-9 spot. And Ohio State would get that home field advantage. We talked about this on the show yesterday. It's the right thing. Okay? Ohio State has a bad loss. It's awful. Tennessee's is not as bad, but still pretty awful. But Ohio State has some feathers in its cap. It has a road win at Penn State and a win over Indiana. Yes, Tennessee, I know you beat Bama, but we're talking about a team that is, we're talking about a bubble team, right? Like, you can't sit there and pound your chest about a team that everyone's bitching about today, which is exactly what's happening. So that is, thank you, Siri. That is, I can't wait to see it. You go back and look at these matchups, man. You go back and look at these matchups. In the first round, you'd have Indiana at Georgia. Sanford Stadium was rocking on Friday. It'll be rocking for that one. You'd have an SEC team at a Big Ten team, Tennessee versus Ohio State in Columbus. You'd have Penn State hosting a 12-5 matchup with Arizona State in the cold. And check that out. Notre Dame hosting a playoff game against Alabama in round 1. Again, don't like this setup. I do like the idea of playoff games on home campuses, and those would be phenomenal. We're going to take a break. When we come back, you're going to hear from Warde Manuel and Rich Clark to an extent, and you'll understand why I say to an extent when you hear the audio, because I guarantee you will laugh. It is freaking hysterical. It's college football smothered and covered, and of course, we are powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show brought to you by Better Together. It's the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs. Talent can get you to play with your friend, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats. Strategize with your partner to boost your odds and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the social daily fantasy movement with Better Together. It provides a sense of camaraderie and enhances the social experience of watching sports. Makes you realize that DFS is fun alone, but like a lot of other things, it's better with friends. It's a way to stay connected with friends when you can't watch sports together in person, and it puts your group to the test and lets you prove yours is the best. Download Better Together from the App Store and sign in using promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for a chance to play in a contest with or against me, yours truly, Barrett Sallee, because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. Okie dokie. We're going to play some sound. First, you're going to hear from Oregon beat writer James Crapia. He's been on the show. He's a good friend of mine. He used to cover Auburn for AL.com. He's been on the show. He's a fantastic guy. He covers Oregon. But he also is not afraid to get defensive or combative or just aggressive in press conference situations, which is something that I like, and you'll hear later, something that I did tonight or yesterday also. But James asked Warde Manuel how how data points are set in stone, even though teams are still going to play this weekend and thus could move up and down in the rankings based on the outcomes. And he used the Mountain West championship game, the AAC championship game, several ACC teams that could jump up. And tell you what, Warde Manuel and Rich Clark, they have no clue what they're doing. Check this out.
Warde, going back to Ralph's question before and the viability of moving data points for the teams who aren't playing relative to those who are because it could enhance schedule. To kind of follow with that, though, what about data points that could move from teams who also aren't playing? And what I mean is UNLV and Army are playing, and with losses, they could drop out of the top 25. And depending on who y'all were to put in, if that were an ACC team that Miami beat, like Louisville or Duke, would that not enhance Miami's resume with a top 25 win?
What you're asking me is if we would say give a bounce to Miami because a team that they beat won their conference championship. Is that correct?
No. I'm saying if Army loses or UNLV loses and drops out of the top 25 and Duke or Louisville, who presently aren't ranked, become top 25 wins for Miami, didn't Miami's resume just improve?
Yeah. We've already evaluated their resume, and we've included the fact that they beat those teams in our analysis of how we see Miami. So the fact that they would get a bump because now those teams are in the top 25 is after that happens is not something that we will do. And as I said in the answer to Ralph, we also won't use it as for lack of a better word, a negative if teams that are in the championship games lose. So that's how we will assess it.
So if two ACC teams were to move into the top 25, that does not help Miami. I just want to get that clear. Miami is stuck on the outside looking in, even if Louisville and Duke were to enter the top 25 in the final ranking. I just want to be clear.
We don't know if Louisville or Duke will enter the top 25 in the final rankings.
No, we don't, but they're just on the outside and the polls. That's why I'm using that.
You're asking me to justify or to project what would be done, we have already evaluated those teams and recognized that Miami has beat Louisville and Duke. So that's already in our analysis in the process of how we've talked about them and where they're ranked. So whether they come in the top 25, we're not going backwards in re-ranking teams based on who wins or loses in the championship game. So in other words, if you're asking me to give a team credit for wins, you're also conversely asking if the merits to teams who a team beat who loses in the championship game. That's in essence what you're asking the committee to consider, and that's not in our purview. We've already considered them and recognized that they beat those teams that they won against, and we've recognized who they've lost against. So those kind of things with a team that's not in the top, not playing for a conference championship, the wins and losses of those that they beat or lost to are not, reevaluated for those teams that don't have a data point themselves in terms of a game.
James asked, what would happen if Louisville and Duke jumped in the top 25? They had no idea how to answer it. Rich Clark even had to whisper in Warde Manuel's ear, hey, bro, this is how we're going to answer this. How on earth can you not reevaluate teams based on how your final rankings are? I mean, let's think about it this way. Florida State was a top 10 team going to Ireland. They went 2-10. You have to adjust your opinion of teams that they played based on what they did as a team, based on what Florida State did. It makes no sense to me. They don't have an answer because they make it up as they go along. Now, here's another thing that happened. Randall McDaniel, former player who was on the selection committee, was not present at the meeting this week. He had a family matter to attend to. Now, there are members that miss all the time. There are members that have to recuse themselves and whatever. But how are you going to set teams in stone? Talking about Ohio State, Tennessee, Indiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, whatever. How are you going to set them in stone if one member is not there at all to make their case for whatever team they want to make their case for? I asked that to Warde Manuel and Rich Clark, and here's that clip. Hey, Warde, thank you for doing this. One thing that I heard at the beginning of this call, did y'all say that Randall McDaniel was not there to vote this week and that he will be there next week?
Yes, that is accurate.
Okay, well then my question, I guess, is pertinent. How can all of these teams be set in stone if one member of the selection committee wasn't present as they were set in stone, as you say they were?
Hey, this is Rich Clark, Executive Director. Thanks, Barrett. So it is built into the number of committee members that we have, so that we can still execute in a fair way the voting for the top 25 rankings. So even if we have one member that's not absent, we still have a quorum that we can continue with the process.
And Barrett, he'll be here to evaluate all the other games. We also at times, Barrett, understand that people have to be recused from the room based on, the recusal policy that the CFP commissioners have put together. And so it's not always that all 13 members are in the room, and we accommodate that in our voting. We have ways to make sure that the votes, if it comes to a tie, we just reconsider and we talk about it more, for example. But it's not a process where we can say one person out of the room would dissuade the vote of the committee. That's just not the case.
So what do we get from all of this? We get what we've known for a very, very long time. They have no idea what they're doing. I'm just saying maybe we should have stayed with the BCS. I'm not going to jump on a soapbox and say we need to reduce the playoff because it's here and I've conceded that election and whatever. But maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't have this stupid committee doing all of this stuff when they just make it up as they go along. We'll take a break. When we come back, Fan Q&A. It's college football smothered and covered. And of course, we are powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, you can bet $5. Your first bet. If you win it, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. The FanDuel Sports app gives you everything you need all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can see live stats, play-by-play, and place your bets all there. It's right there at your fingertips. Just visit FanDuel.com today. FanDuel.com. They'll give you started with $5 or $150, I should say, on a $5 bet. That's one $5 bet. If you win it, you get $150 guaranteed at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we have Fan Q&A. Winter speaks at Major Watton. Why did a 3-loss Alabama with an embarrassing loss 2 weeks ago make the playoff? Why did Ohio State get rewarded with a home game for losing a home game as a big favorite? Major Woot and I have no freaking clue. Neither do they. That's the beauty of this. You guys wanted it. This is what you got. They don't know. They have no clue. Their justification is, I guarantee you, that's what we felt like at the time. Even though one of our members wasn't there. Whatever. Explain Ohio State's CFP ranking from Tim Thomas. I assume Tim wants me to talk about Ohio State being 6 and not lower. Well, I think with the 6 and 7 Ohio State Tennessee situation, it's because Tennessee doesn't have as many good wins. Ohio State's are Penn State and Indiana, 3 and 9. That's pretty good. What I don't understand, and I've said this consistently, SMU is undervalued. They're not the 8th best team in the country. They should be 6. They have one loss, and it's to the number 18 team in the country. And that team, that SMU team, didn't have its current starting quarterback at that time. Preston Stone was playing. Kevin Jennings went in that game, and now Jennings is a flat-out monster. So I assume the question was, why is Ohio State ranked number 6? Ahead of Tennessee, I get. Ahead of SMU, I don't get that at all. It's not the way it should be. But again, they're making this up as they go along. Russ Gambrell at C. Russ Gam. Georgia -8.5 at home versus Indiana. Does talent carry them to an easy cover similar to Ohio State's win versus Indiana? I'm going to stop predicting anything Georgia does from now on. Look, 8.5, I would probably lean Georgia. At home, they're figuring things out offensively. Defensively, having a couple weeks to get ready after the SEC championship game. I'm sorry, they would have to lose the SEC championship game. But I think, to me, talent does shine in that situation. And while I love what Indiana has done, the SEC speed thing, especially up front, it matters. Maybe not for some Big Ten teams like Ohio State, Oregon. Like those teams are built like traditional SEC teams. Indiana's not. And so, yeah, I think 8.5, if that's the line, I'm sure you're going to see a bunch of those lines come out throughout the course of the next week or two. I would take Georgia minus 8.5. I think that's a fair bet. Not here to provide betting advice, but I think that would be a safe one to go for. All right, last one for Q&A, my good buddy Patrick Shuck, my producer from SiriusXM, way back when. P. Shuck, what are the best cookies to leave out for Santa? P. Shuck, the best cookies to leave out for Santa are the ones that I eat, which are all of them. Every single one. Now, for me, I'm a sucker for a chocolate chip cookie. I don't think Santa likes them, which means I get to eat all of them. I think a very soft peanut butter cookie, you cannot go wrong with that. I give Santa, my daughter eats the cream out of the Oreo and leaves the cookie. I leave the cookie part. I don't want that stuff. I'll just throw it away. Chocolate chip, peanut butter, those are my jams. And I guarantee you there will be lots of cookies eaten by Santa Claus Christmas Eve in the Sallee household. That'll do it for this edition of College Football Smothered and Covered, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Hey, thank you for making this your first listen. For your second, go check out Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On College Football, any of the conference channels as well, and Locked On Bama. Go check them out right now. Also, South Carolina or Miami or Ole Miss, Stephen Willis over there. Like, there's a lot going on those channels, so check them out as well. If you want to join the subtext group, the link is below. You can text me. I can text you. I'll be at the SEC Championship game, so we'll be sharing some fun picks from the Mercedes-Benz monstrosity on Saturday. Of course, RIP Georgia Dome. Josh Payton and I, we send condolences up to the Georgia Dome every time there's an event at Mercedes-Benz Stadium because Mercedes-Benz sucks. Hate it. Place is awful. That'll do it for this Wednesday edition. We'll be back Thursday to talk a little more about the world of college football. Talk to you then. Have a good one.